What's up my friends, welcome back. So here I have my 3D printable plane that I'm working on for more than 6 months I think, because I don't always have time for 3D editing. Anyway, this will be a P38 plane and this will have a wingspan of around 1.5 meters, so imagine that, this will be quite huge. But anyway, this plane is not ready yet and we won't be talking about this in this video. But every time I post a project with 3D files or 3D editing, I get at least 1 or 2 comments on which software I'm using for editing my parts and if I will make a tutorial about that. So that's exactly what we will do today. But have in mind, this will be a basic tutorial, so the first step that you need to know in order to start working with Blender. I also have to mention that I'm not a professional 3D designer, I'm an electronic engineer, so maybe my methods are not perfect. But anyway, this is how I do it and that's what I will show you today. Maybe for some of you this will be too easy because you already know this, but maybe for others this will be helpful. I think this video will have at least 2 parts, because it could get quite long. So in this video we'll see the interface of Blender, the main tools that we have, the main shortkeys and how to use those, how to create objects, how to use booleans and so on. And in the second video we'll see how to export and repair the objects for 3D printing and how to slice the final object. I will also try to tell you some tips that I've learned during these last years, and I hope that this will increase your skills. I'm pretty sure that once you finish this entire video, you will at least be able to design a simple object. So before we start, make sure that you subscribe and activate that notification bell. And if you consider supporting my work, check my Patreon page as well. So guys, let's get started. This video is sponsored by LCSC, one of the largest electronic components distributor in China, with more than 200,000 components shipping worldwide. Their prices are very low and if you buy more components, the price could get even lower. The site is fully connected with my favorite CAD platform, EasyEDA, so design your circuit or PCB layout and then you can directly go and order the components from here. So make the order, select the shipping and receive the components in just a few days. So guys, check LCSC and get your electronic components. What's up my friends, welcome back. Today we'll learn how to use some tools of Blender and be able to create 3D files like these ones for my 3D printable plane. First, make sure that you have a pen and a paper on your side and that you follow all my steps at the same time. I think that this way of learning is the best. You making the same as I do at the same time. And the pen and paper are for writing down all the short keys, because this will make your life a lot easier while designing. At least they do for me. So let's start. So Blender is a free tool. Go to blender.org and download it. Now you can run Blender. This is the main interface of Blender. In the middle we have the designing area and all around we have our tools. So here we have our first short key. Now press the T key to enable or disable the left side tools in case that you don't have that menu. From this menu, for today, we will only use the first 2 blocks, Tools and Create. On the Create tab, we can add primitive shapes, create curves, add lights or other such as text for example. But we start with the basic. First we can create a plane, which is just a simple 2D mesh. But before you create the object, you can select where to place that object. With just a simple left click on the designing area, you can select where the cursor will be. It could be here, here or anywhere else. What I like to do is to have my cursor always in the middle. So for that you can press the Shift key and then press S. And then you select Cursor to Center. Now the created object will always have the same center. Okay, let's create a simple cube for example. So I click the cube button. Now as you can see, we now have some settings here. And this is very important to know, that Blender works in radius dimensions. So for example right now, this cube has a radius of 1 mm as you can see here. So that means the side of the cube is 2 mm. So always have that in mind. So for example, if you want to make a cube of 10 by 10, you should change the radius to 5. I hope that this is quite clear. Anyway, I delete this cube and now let's create a circle. In the settings tab, we now have the radius but also the amount of vertices. If you want to 3D print circular parts, you should have more vertices, because the more vertices you have, the smoother will be the curves. For example, increase the vertices from 32 to 124. Okay, so now we have our circle. Now let's see some moving controls. We have scaling, rotating, and moving. From now on, write down all the commands so it will be easier to remember. We can zoom in and out with the mouse wheel. But now, if you keep press the shift key and then you keep press the wheel button of the mouse, you can move around without changing the angle. But if you only press the wheel button of the mouse, you will move around and change the angle in the 3D space. Now we have some very important short keys. For this example, I import an object to better see the movement. On the number side of your keyboard, press 7 and that will directly take you to the top view. Now press 1 and that will change you to the front view. Anytime you press the 9 key, it will make a 180 degrees flip. So for example, you press 7 and you are on the top view, but then you press 9 and you will get to the bottom view. If you press 1, you will get to the front view, and when you press 9, you will get to the rear view. You can use the 4 and 6 keys to rotate around the object to the left or to the right. I use these short keys all the time, so please write them down. Okay, now let's get back to our circle. Before we go into edit mode, we have a few more short keys to see. So select your object with the right mouse click and then you can press the S key. This will take you into scale mode. And as you can see, if I move the mouse, I can change the size of my object. When you have the desired size, click the left mouse button and the scaling process is complete. But now pay attention. The size will change according to the origin of your object, which is this dot here. Now for this circle, the dot is exactly in the middle, but we can change this if we want. Select the object once again and now you can press the spacebar. Now here you have to type origin and then select set origin. Now as you can see, you can set the origin to any other point, and the most useful one is to set it to the center of mass or the area. Or you can do this. Click anywhere on the designing area and create a new cursor, as before. Now press the spacebar, type once again origin and select origin to the 3D cursor. So as you can see, the new origin of the object is now here. If I now scale it up, it will be able to scale according to this point. You will see that the origin of an object is very important. Imagine that you have this cube and you want to scale it only upwards, so the base will stay always in the same place. But if I scale it right now, as you can see, all the sides will get bigger. But this is what I can do. I press tab, I get into edit mode, I select all the bottom vertices of the cube and then I press Shift S, and now you press cursor to select it. Now I press tab once again and we get out of edit mode. Now press the space bar, type origin once again and select origin to the 3D cursor. So now, since the origin is on the bottom side, if I scale the cube up, the base will always be in the same place. As you can see, you can play around with the origin of an object and learn more. Okay guys, but till now the scaling was done manually with the mouse. But if we need precise scaling, this is what we do. Let's say I have this cube of 2 mm. I want it to be 10 mm, so I have to scale it 5 times. So select the object and press the S key once again. But now instead of moving the mouse, press the 5 key. So as you can see, now the cube is 5 times bigger. Like this you can make precise scaling. You can even type numbers with comma, such as scale 5.22 if you want. Okay, but now what if you want to scale the object only in one direction? For that, select the object. Now once again press the S key and enter scale mode. And now you can press any of the X, Y or Z keys. For example, I press X. As you can see, now the object will scale only in the X direction. I press the Y key and it will do the same but only in the Y direction. And the same will go for the Z key. In this mode you can still scale it using the mouse or just press the S and then X and then type the number, 5.22 for example, and that will scale the object 5.22 times in the X direction. Then you have to press enter and define the new object size. But now what if you want to scale the object in two directions but not in the third one? For example, you have a cylinder. You want to make the cylinder wider but not taller. So you have to scale it in the X and Y direction but not in the Z direction. For that, once again type S and we get into scale mode. And now you have to press the Shift key and the Z key to exclude the Z axis. And now as you can see, it will only scale in the X and Y direction. And you can do this with any axis that you want. Okay guys, so we are finally done with the scale option. But now if you hit the R key, you will have rotation. And you can do the same as for the scale. Rotate in one or two directions or manual using the mouse. If you hit R and then type a number, it will rotate that object in that amount of degrees. For example, I hit R and then X and then 45. So that will rotate the object 45 degrees only in the X direction. So this works the same as scaling. Okay, we finally get into edit mode. To do that, we have to select the object and we hit the tab key. So now we are into edit mode and the menus are different. On the bottom we can select from vertex view to segments or faces. In vertex mode we can see each vertex separately. To select any vertex, just right click on it. If you want to select more vertices, you have to keep the Shift key pressed and then right click on each vertex that you want to select. To deselect an unwanted vertex, you have to right click again on it. But if you want to select a whole area of vertices, just keep press the Ctrl key and then long press the left mouse button and select the area of vertices. This is very helpful when you want to select a lot of points. But now as you can see, when we do this, we only select the vertices on the visible side of the object. If you want to select the vertices on the back as well, you have to rotate the object and select the rest. But there is a better way. If you press the Z key, you can change the view from solid to wireframe. In this mode, you can see through the object. So now as you can see, I can select all the vertices without rotating around the object. Then you can press Z once again and you will get back into solid mode. Okay, so once you have selected a vertex, what can you do? Well, first let's see how to move them. Select one or more vertices and then you have to press the G key. Now you are able to move the vertices around. If you are in the 3D view, you can't really tell the real position of the vertices. So that's why I usually go to the top or the front view of the object. For example, I select the vertices of this face here. Now I press 7 and go to the top view. Now I press G and I can move the vertices only in the X and Y direction. When I have the desired position, I click the left mouse button and the new position will be saved. But this is manual movement. But once again, as for the scale mode, we can use the X, Y and Z buttons of the keyboard. So select any vertices, press G and now you can press the X key for example, and a red line will appear marking the X direction. Now they will move only in the X direction. You can do the same for the Y and the Z if you want. Press G then Y or press G then Z and move the vertices only in those directions. You can do this manually with the mouse or using exact numbers once again. For example, select any vertex and press G to enter moving mode. Now press X and select the X axis. Now I type 3.5 and that will move 3.5 mm in the X direction to the right. If you type a minus before the 3.5, it will move 3.5 mm in the X direction but to the left. Okay, in edit mode, scaling is still working. But now the origin is not the object origin anymore, but the middle point of the selected vertices. For example, I select these points here and I press the S key for scale. You can see that they will scale up according to the middle point of all the selected vertices. If I select more vertices, the middle point will change according to that. For example, I want to scale only the top side of this cylinder. I press the Z key to enter wireframe mode. I keep the Ctrl key pressed and the left mouse button and select all the top side vertices. Now I press the S key and scale them up. And again you can use the X, Y and Z keys to select in which direction you want to scale them up. In the menu you can select from vertices, to segments or faces, and do the exact same thing, but instead of just simple points, you can select, move or scale entire segments or faces. Okay, so I think we are done with scaling and moving. Let's now pass to the extrude option. To show you an example, I select all the vertices but one and delete the rest. Press the delete key and select vertices. Now I have just one point. I select that point and press the E key, and by that we enable the extrude mode. As you can see, I now have a second point and these are joined together with a segment, and I can move this around, and when I press the left mouse button, that new point will stay there. Now I press E again and create another one, and so on. In this way you can create unique shapes. And once again you can just press the E key and then the X, Y or Z and move the new point only in a specific direction. For example, I select this point. I press E for extrude and then X, and now extrude that new point only in the X direction. If you want to close the loop, you can merge two vertices together. Select the first one, then select the second one and go to the left side menu. Go to Tools, select Merge and select on which vertex you want to make the union. It can be on the first selected vertex, the second or in the middle. You can always merge multiple vertices in just one, and by that you can close the loop. The extrude function also works with segments and faces. So now we start with two vertices instead of just one. Press the E key once again for extrude. As you can see, it will create a face because now we have extruded an entire segment. And the same goes for faces. Select the face, hit extrude and extrude a new face. And to create a new face between multiple points, you have to press the F key. And this is another useful short key. For example, I select two vertices and I press F and it will create a segment. But now I select 3 or more vertices and I press F, and in this case it will create a face between those selected points. You can also select inverse, so let me show you an example. Let's say that you have an object with a lot of points, but you only want to keep some of the vertices. Select the vertices that you want to keep, and now I press the double V key. Now you have to click on select inverse, and that will select all the other vertices. Now for example you can press delete, and by that you will be left only with the points that you wanted. Also, while designing, you will see that one face of the object is darker and the other one is lighter. That is to represent which is the exterior and the interior. So if you want to flip any face, select that and press the double V key again. And now you have to select invert normal. And as you can see, now the face is flipped. You will definitely use this option a lot while designing. Okay guys, so till now we have seen that we can select, we can move, we can scale and rotate and also extrude the points of an object. And at the same time we can combine all these short keys with the X, Y and Z keys and perform these operations only in one or two directions. Okay, so let's exit edit mode for now. For that you have to press once again the tab key. So we are back into object mode. Let's say that you have two objects, a cylinder and a cube, and you want to merge them together. A very easy way to do that is to select the cube, keep the shift key pressed, and then select the cylinder, and now press Ctrl J. And this will join the parts together. Now this is just one object, and as you can see, if I enter edit mode, I can now edit all the vertices of both objects, because now this is just one object. But there is another way to do this, and that way is better. So let's say that you have once again a cylinder and a cube, but this time these are not separated apart, but one is on top of the other. If I press Ctrl J as before, as you can see, a loose vertex of the cube will be inside of the cylinder. And if you want to 3D print this part, this will be a problem, because there is a loose vertex inside of a part. But for that we use booleans. So let's see the first boolean example. Let's say that you want to make a cylinder with a hole in it. Of course you can first create a circle and then manually make the hole, then extrude the perimeter and make it taller, and by that you could get some sort of cylinder with a hole. But a better way is to do this. Create a cylinder. Then create another small cylinder with the size of the diameter of the hole that you want. Now make this cylinder a little bit taller. Select the small object and then the big one. Now go to this menu and select modifiers, and here you have to add a boolean. Now with this picking tool, select the small cylinder. Now change the mode to carve and the operation to difference and hit apply. Now delete the small cylinder, and as you can see, it has subtracted the small cylinder from the big one, and now we have a hole. But maybe for a simple object this is not useful, but look at this example. Here I have a part that I want to 3D print, and here I have the shape that I need for an M3 screw and an M3 nut. So I place this overlap with the object and I realize the same boolean operation. So now I have the exact hole in my object, so I can 3D print this file if I want. So booleans are very useful. But instead of subtracting with booleans, you can make a union. So here we have another two objects. As before, I select one and then the other. I add new booleans, I change the mode to carve, but now select the union operation. That will unify these parts exactly on the points where they touch. Another use of booleans is to cut straight shapes. For example, while designing my plane, I had to make the main shape of my wing. So if I want to cut this in half, here's what you have to do. Create a plane that is big enough so it will cover the entire width of the wing. Now I rotate the plane in the X direction so it will be perpendicular to the wing. Now select the plane and then the wing. Add a boolean and select the carve mode. I hit apply and there you go. I've cut the wing in half. But if you want to have both halves of the object, you should first type Ctrl D, and by that duplicate the wing. Then do the boolean operation 2 times, one with difference and the other one with intersect. So now I have the wing cut in 2 halves. So I think this is pretty useful. Booleans are one of the most important operations for me. That's how I created all the parts for my plane. For example, to make any part just 0.8 mm thick, I create the wing for example. Then I duplicate it and scale it down 0.8 mm all around. I now add a boolean and subtract the small wing from the bigger one, so now I have only the perimeter of exactly 0.8 mm thickness. So I've done the same for the supports inside of the wings, for the holes, the strange shapes and so on, because with booleans you can merge parts together or you could cut some shapes out of other shapes. In a future video we will see a lot more examples, because I think this basic introduction video is already long enough. But till then, practice around with all these operations. You have a list below this video with all the short keys that I've used in this tutorial, so make sure that you check that. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. I hope that you understand everything and that you've learned something new. Make sure you subscribe and activate the notification bell. And if you consider supporting my work, check my Patreon page. Thanks again and see you later guys.